Hello everybody, welcome back to another 3-week-old, 4-probably-week-old movie review. That's just how I roll apparently. I mean, that's what happens when you have a YouTube channel run by a world-class slacker like myself. So, Warcraft. Originally just called Warcraft, but now, according to IMDb, they changed the title to Warcraft The Beginning. Which, as stupid as it seems, is actually pretty clever on their part. Obviously, they waited to see what the response was for the first movie before they were like, okay, there's going to be a second movie. Because, you know, it's pretty lame to go into a movie and, like, they're already planning, you know, a sequel. You know, like, there's no such thing as a movie that needs a sequel, necessarily. Except for, I guess, the Hobbit movies. But yeah, so Warcraft The Beginning, obviously based on the video game series Warcraft, which I played in my youth and I love, and of course I'm talking about the real-time strategy game. I did play Warcraft, World of Warcraft, as well, but that just kind of fell on the wayside. That's when the whole franchise just sort of died out for me. It really sucks when companies decide to take an IP and then turn it into an MMO, or, you know, massive multiplayer online, whatever MMO stands for, because then all their money, all their resources go into that game. You know, there's never going to be a Warcraft 4 thanks to the fact that they made World of Warcraft, so why make a Warcraft 4? They basically, you know, they found their money-making machine. But this isn't a review of the game, this is a review of the movie based on the game. The story itself actually takes place before and kind of during the very first Warcraft game, actually, surprisingly. Which is hilariously not available in Blizzard's online store. Neither is Warcraft 2 for that matter. But the original Warcraft came out on DOS. It was that old, and I used to play it. Hard as balls, but it was fun. The story kind of takes place around the first Warcraft, which was Warcraft. The original Warcraft was called Orcs vs. Humans. Or it was like the subtitle of the game, which this movie clearly is that same sort of concept. Orcs invade the human lands, and the humans fight, and there's this big war. It's the whole plot of every single Warcraft game. You have the Horde, or the Orcs, and whoever's on their side, and the Alliance, or the humans, and whoever's on their side. It's basically the crux of the entire story. But this sort of covers kind of like the origins of it, which involves the only two characters whose names I know from playing the games. You have Gul'dan, the kind of like shaman guy working for the Orcs, who's played by a CG dude. No, but really played by Daniel Wu. Because when I look at Gul'dan, I can totally tell that it's Daniel Wu, you know. But then you also have Medivh on the human side, who's also kind of a wizard. He's actually introduced as the Prophet in Warcraft 3, which, without spoiling anything, makes very little sense to how this movie tells the story. But Medivh was played by Ben Foster, which blew my mind when it first happened, because I had no idea he was going to be in this movie. And I've always, like, looked at him as, you know, the cheesy 90s high school drama movie, you know, get over it kind of actor. And here he is as this serious, supposed to be elderly character in this fantasy epic. Really weird. I mean, I know he's done other stuff, but it's always been cheesy, you know, silly stuff. But in this, he's like playing it dead straight, and it's weird, but it's kind of cool. Because again, one of the only characters I recognize by name. I'm not a huge, you know, nerd, I guess, of the whole Warcraft series. I didn't read the extended universe novels. I didn't dive into the backstory of, you know, the first game, like why orcs and humans fought, you know, that type of thing. So, for all I know, the main character, Anduin Lothar, played by Travis Fimmel, is just sort of a throwaway, here's a human hero, protagonist guy, whatever. um, but, probably a huge character. If you read the novels, probably you're supposed to look at him and be like, yeah, how cool, that's the guy I know about or read about, or, played a game that had him in it, or, something. But, yeah, for me, it's just like, okay, it's a dude. You also have Paula Patton playing Garona, who is also sort of a protagonist, kind of an anti-hero, in a way. But she's more on the orc side, but she's not full orc. She's kind of like a half-bred orc. And I think of all the characters, and I mean story-wise too, hers is the most interesting, because she's not necessarily an orc, but she also doesn't belong with the humans, even though she isn't full orc and, is kind of human-like. So she has this really interesting dynamic of, whose side am I on? Where do I belong? Who will accept me in this crazy world that's now at war with each other, type of thing. It's really fascinating. The role she plays in the story is really cool, really important, and I think overall, just story-wise, it was cool. According to the official Warcraft lore, this actually changes a lot that happens. The ending of this movie is vastly different from what the official ending game-wise is, so I don't know if they're completely rewriting the history of the Warcraft series, or if it's just, for the sake of Hollywood, let's make this go this way, but still keep the usual elements of the stories, like Arthas and Jaina and all of them. I'm actually super stoked if the movies actually go into that story, because that'd be cool to see on the big screen, even though you just play Warcraft 3 and you have that whole story told to you. It's kind of the issue with video games. Video game movies is like, if it's a story that's already been told through the game, like, what story is there to tell via a movie, but yeah, story-wise, I thought it was pretty good. The more I thought about this movie, I guess I should warn you, the more I thought about this movie, the more I liked it. I think generally I really enjoyed the movie, even though I had no idea who these characters were and very little interest in, some of them. And going into the whole, a video game movie, one of the things I've always brought up, I think I brought it up in Hitman, I brought up in Angry Birds too as well, I think, is, a main element of the game being put on the big screen, sort of as a nod to this series. I mean, of course, there's, you don't see people mining for gold or building a city, just, finding a plot in the middle of, the woods and just building a city out of it, or having peasants mine lumber and building more farms and what have you. But there are a lot of shots in this that look like they're supposed to be from the game, top down, kind of at an isometric view of, human knights clashing with these orc grunts, and it looks just like a shot from the game, a very highly resoluted and highly CG'd scene from the game, but nonetheless, you could almost, picture the cursor, going around clicking on these guys. It's a really interesting, is a really cool nod. If they did do that on purpose, it was really neat. It was really appreciated. And speaking of the CG, I mean, I joke that a lot of the characters are just heavily CG'd, so do you give Ben Schnetzer the honor of being Khadgar, or do you give the CG artists the credit for having the character come to life as an orc? Because I'm telling you now, these guys look nothing like their orc counterparts. Robert Kaczynski as Orgrim and Clancy Brown as Blackhand. Like, there's no point in showing these guys, because that's not what they look like in the movie at all. I mean, I guess voice acting, sure. I don't know if they did mocap or something, but whatever. Um, but that all being said, it's a beautiful movie, a beautiful looking movie. CG was really good. Again, very fantasy, very colorful, which I really appreciated. It's been a while since we've seen a fantasy setting that actually has color. Orcs are green and brown, not black. you know, uh, a faction of the army, has a set color. Again, like the video game, red versus blue. Basically, the alliance or the humans have blue on them, so you can spot a human fighter in the mix with an orc who's kind of reddish. Really fun stuff. Really beautiful looking movie. Probably one of the reasons why the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, because I would watch it again just to appreciate the effects that went into it. Another fun nod I have to bring up is the appearance, the cameo of a Murloc, a random Murloc in this movie, and of course it makes the iconic Murloc sound effect, which was ripped straight out of the game. Like, they didn't even make their own sound effects in the studio. You can tell they just took a file from the game, put it in this movie, and there you go. It was kind of cheesy, but again, appreciated. They didn't die though. You didn't see Murlocs getting killed, which was unfortunate. I would have appreciated that some more. But speaking of sound effects taken straight from the game, the soundtrack of this movie was boring as hell. Terrible soundtrack. It was basically, I'm pretty sure most of the tracks in this movie were taken from World of Warcraft, which were just, they're dull and they just go on, and they don't have very much substance. They're not exciting in any way, shape, or form. It was uninspired, I think, is what I would go with it. It's just, again, ripped straight from a MMO where the music obviously wasn't, something they put a lot of thought into. Or, why would they if it's a video game? But in a movie, you should at least put some more effort into it. At least get a composer that's, worth something. But alas, again, I'm pretty sure it's straight from the game. It sounded like music straight from the game, which is disappointing because, again, Warcraft music is boring as hell, or at least World of Warcraft music. Also, I have to complain that this movie had a distinct lack of dwarves and elves. It was mainly humans and orcs. Again, true to the original Warcraft game, you didn't have mixed races. That wasn't until Warcraft 2 where the orcs had trolls and ogres, and the humans had elves, and they didn't have dwarves. But dwarves came later. But still, like, it's silly because you see them in the movie briefly, very briefly. You see dwarves, and sometimes you see elves. But not at any point whatsoever do they play any important role in the movie, which was disappointing. I wanted to see more of that. But again, this is now not just Warcraft, this is Warcraft the beginning. It's not just Star Wars, it's Star Wars A New Hope type thing. So the dwarves and elves will probably be more important later on, I'm sure. But yeah, those are my only complaints. Very small, except for the music. Again, that it's a damn shame that they didn't go with something better. Again, story was okay. I'm not in the know as far as the deep history of the Warcraft series, so I couldn't tell you if it was accurate or if what the original writers had in mind was any better. But what was there was cool, even though, again, it apparently strays from how it's supposed to end, which I don't know where they're going with that, especially since they make a big deal out of, director Duncan Jones. He plays video games, he plays World of Warcraft, so, he knows what he's doing when he makes this movie, even though he completely rewrote the history of the story, But anyway, that's just neither here nor there. I give Warcraft the beginning 3 out of 5. I give it 3 out of 5 exploding sheep, which are also absent from this movie, which is a shame. But yeah, good stuff. It was a good movie. Again, the more I thought about it, a week passed, 2 weeks passed, and I'm just like, yeah, it was a good movie. The more I sat on it, the more I was like, yeah, it wasn't bad. Just wish it was more interesting to the layman who, played the hell out of 1, played the hell out of 2, played the hell out of 3, and then, just kind of mindlessly wandered through World of Warcraft and then just kind of gave up. But, yeah, good stuff. 3 out of 5 again. Exploding sheep. You got all of it. Goodbye.